Formula One on 5 Live.
Welcome to round 11 of the Formula One World Championship, and welcome to Silverstone, the home of motorsport. Tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of fans are going to make their pilgrimage to Silverstone this weekend to watch some of the greats take to this historic track. And of course, it's our reigning world champion and current championship leader Max Verstappen, who seems to have it all under control at the moment. 81 points separating him from his teammate at Red Bull, Sergio Perez. So it's all in his hands this weekend, I think, but quite a few teams and drivers hoping to upset the party, perhaps. Joining me upstairs in the commentary box is Harry Benjamin, our lead commentator, and former Mercedes reserve driver and Jaguar Formula E driver Sam Bird. Guys, the scene is set. It's a beautiful day here at Silverstone. Blue skies above, fans packing the grandstand. 450,000 fans are rumoured to be coming this weekend, Harry. Did you struggle to get into the circuit this morning?
I don't know what you're intimating at there, Rosanna. There's a brilliant a London black cab taxi service that just looks, it's so quintessentially British, that runs you from the main gate all the way to the paddock. And I was caught in a little bit of traffic, but it was okay because it's fans and it's nearly 500,000 we're talking here. And this is just Friday. Here yesterday on Thursday, again, another beautiful day, blue skies, the sun shining down. It was absolutely packed. I spent a bit of time in some of the campsites last night as well, which are filled to the rafters. It's such a fun festival vibe now that you get here at the British Grand Prix, and it gets bigger every year. And this is probably the biggest that I've seen the British Grand Prix in quite a while. Yeah, the atmosphere is already buzzing, and we've got four, I like to say, British drivers on the grid. Sir Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Lando Norris and Alex Albon, of course, a British-born Thai driver. So plenty of drivers hoping that the home crowd can give them a little bit of an advantage. Sam, you've raced here. This is such a brilliant track. I think the drivers love coming here. What is it about it that makes it so special, and what are the challenges?
Yeah, there's always something super special about having a home race, and this is one of the drivers' favourite circuits. It's so fast, a really, really flowing circuit, very flat, quite windy on occasions. We've got a great day in front of us right now. Perfectly blue skies. Don't know what the weather's going to be like tomorrow, Rosanna, but we're in for a great day of testing today. Well, that's the beauty of the British summer, isn't it? We never know quite what we're going to get. I've been checking the weather forecast. Sometimes it says rain, sometimes it says clear conditions, but that almost makes it even more special here in Britain, because the drivers are really tested. It's such a physical track. We've got those fabulous corner names, Maggotts and Beckett's, where the drivers sustain some serious G, about 5G through that particular section of the circuit. And Sam, that's another element the drivers have to think about, isn't it? Yeah, physically on the neck and on your core, this circuit really beats you up. It is very, very intense, but it's so thrilling. There's nothing better than getting Silverstone nailed down and putting on a good lap time. When you've got a great car around here and you're driving well, I'd say it's probably one of my favourite circuits to drive, that's for sure. And we are back to the traditional race weekend format. Last weekend, when we were in Austria and Spielberg, we had the sprint weekend format. So this weekend they've got the 3 practice sessions. But Harry, the drivers know this track so well. They've been racing on it since they were sort of 4 or 5 years old. So they know how this track sort of challenges them. But we've now got 3 practice sessions. So we're going to really bed into the weekend, aren't we?
Yeah, it's a real change up from last week, of course, with Austria, when we had the sprint race, where you only get 1 practice session on the Friday. So they're going to get 3 full hours worth, 2 on this Friday. But, well, it's Lewis Hamilton who's got the advantage over everybody. 7 pole positions, the most of any. 8 times he has won around here as well. He loves this track. The British racers love this track. But as you say, Rosanna, it's such a popular track amongst the fans and the drivers alike. It's challenging, it's tight, twisty and technical. Some really high speeds as well, built up down, well, the Hamilton Straight, the Hangar Straight and the Wellington Straight too. Interesting, this week we've got loads of upgrades from the teams as well, so it's going to be a bit into the unknown. So these practice sessions are going to be crucial.
Absolutely, and you have got such an amazing vantage point up above the pit lane from your commentary box. I know you can see the fans packing the grandstands, but I'm sure you'll be able to have a little look at those upgrades on how they're performing and what performance they're bringing to the cars for the teams. I'm going to head to the pit lane, but I've got to ask you, if you're listening now, please do, once the session's finished, check out the Checkered Flag podcast, the preview for the British Grand Prix. Our colleague Jenny Gow was back in the paddock yesterday. It was fabulous to see her. She sat down with Sir Lewis Hamilton, her first interview since her stroke at the beginning of the year. It is a phenomenal listen, so please make sure you listen to that over the course of the weekend. But now, Harry and Sam, I'm going to hand it up to you. I'm going to head to the pit lane. Let's get this FP1 session underway.
Thank you very much, Rosanna. Now the green light is on at the end of the pit lane and cars are out on track. Alex Albon in the Williams, followed by Fernando Alonso in the Williams. The sun is shining, and for a Friday, as we look out of our commentary box window, we're just positioned over the Haas garage in the the early part of the main straight, and looking out opposite us, it is absolutely packed. For those who would like to do a sync up, it is 59 minutes and 17 seconds remaining of this session as they start to get out on track. This is how the championship lines up. Max Verstappen, with 6 poles, 4 consecutive and 7 wins so far this year, has amassed a massive 229 points. He is 81 ahead of his closest rival, his teammate Sergio Perez. Then comes Fernando Alonso, who is only 17 points behind Perez, followed by Hamilton and Sainz, the top 5. And then the constructors, it's no surprise that it's Red Bull, who have won every single race of the year so far, that have a whopping 199-point lead over Mercedes. That's where the real tight fight is coming, though. Just 3 points separating Mercedes and Aston Martin for second in the constructors, with Ferrari closing in behind as well in fourth, Alpine rounding out the top 5. So it could be a really exciting weekend. Sam is alongside me for all of it. You've driven around here loads of times, haven't you, Sam, as Rosanna mentioned. But does a home race bring you something different? Does it actually give you a bit of a home boost?
It really does. There is something that brings out the best in British drivers at the British Grand Prix, and certainly for myself, I mean, it's been my home race in the World Endurance Championship, in GP2. I won here a couple of times in GP2, won here in World Series by Renault, and I was lucky enough to win here in the World Endurance Championship. So it's been a really strong circuit for me, as we hear Lance Stroll.
We're checking.
As he's got limp home mode. That's not good on your outlap. But what we're going to see a lot of over the first sort of 10-15 minutes is a lot of people working on their new upgrades and seeing what they do aerodynamically. You see like almost scaffolding on the front of the cars. That's to check that the aerodynamics are doing exactly what the engineers think they're going to do.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of upgrades, there is a full list. Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, Haas, AlphaTauri and Williams have all brought upgrades. Nothing has been submitted for Ferrari. AlphaTauri have brought a huge amount of upgrades. This is the sound of George Russell in his Mercedes in the approach to one of the fastest corners on this track, the right-hander of Copse. Of course, you'll be familiar with that from a couple of years ago. Verstappen, or indeed Verstappen versus Hamilton going through that corner. Didn't end well for Max Verstappen, but as George Russell comes through Maggots and Beckett's right now, Mercedes bringing a new front wing end play and a new front wing to try and find some performance gain, because actually last time out in Austria, Sam, it was a bit underwhelming from Mercedes and Aston Martin. Ferrari were the ones that almost surprised us with the step up they'd taken in form.
Yeah, considering what we saw in Barcelona from Mercedes, I think we thought, wow, they're back. They're going to be in the fight now. They're in the conversation. And in Austria, they weren't at all in the conversation. They were very disappointing, and I think they came away from there with their tail firmly between their legs. They're going to be looking for a big bounce back here at Silverstone. Other people to look out for this weekend, in my opinion, Oscar Piastri, who's been, I think, a very strong rookie this season. He's going to be getting the upgrade, the same upgrade as Lando Norris now, so that's going to be interesting to see how he gets on.
Norris for top British racer come the end of Sunday?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't back against George or Lewis, to be honest. If they get it right, they should be ahead of McLaren. They should be, but right now you just don't know what Mercedes are going to bring to the table? Are they going to be competitive, or are they going to be sort of 4th, 5th best team?
Yeah, well, still early doors in this free practice 1 session. Lewis Hamilton has the fastest lap time on 1:32.2, ahead of Sainz, Norris, Tsunoda and Stroll, the top 5. But we last heard Rosanna was heading off to the pit lane. Where have you ended up, Rosanna?
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, I've headed out to the pit lane and outside the Mercedes garage with the Mercedes mechanics looking on. I think there'll be a lot of hope, a lot of expectation about this upgrade that you've been talking about that they're bringing this weekend. I'm sure they're hoping it can set them straight and push them in the right direction that Lewis Hamilton was talking about yesterday, saying it will be a step in the right direction. You can just hear one of the Williams team just leaving the pit lane as well. And we were talking about the blue skies and the sunny weather we've got here in Silverstone, but actually the pit lane is completely in shade, so it's a rather agreeable place to spend the afternoon, I have to say, at the moment. Sometimes it can get scorching hot, but the way it's designed here with the top teams from last year's championship actually in the middle of the pit lane, so it's a different layout as well, and that enables the fans that have come here in their hundreds of thousands to get a really good glimpse of the top teams. And one of those top teams, the top team, Red Bull, the mechanics are out now with all the gear to receive their driver, so I'm sure you'll see a Red Bull driving into the pits very shortly. This key FP1 session allowing the teams and drivers to get back up to speed with this track that they do know so well, but I'm sure every second counts. As Sergio Perez comes in with a lot of furniture at the front of his car, a big aero rake over the front tyres and in between around the suspension, so plenty of testing going on for the, shall I say, number 2 driver?
Well, I think that's fair to say, Rosanna, considering, what was it, an 81-point gap, isn't it, at the top right now, and Perez coming off a bit of a rough patch of form, but back on the podium in Austria. I'm always, about the British Grand Prix as well, I'm always so amazed by how immaculate the grass is cut as well. The lawn upkeep, fantastic around here. So they do a great job of keeping this place in ship shape. But Verstappen, speaking of Red Bull, is now the fastest driver with a 1:34. He is a 1:30.4. He is out on the hard compound of tyre, as is Lewis Hamilton, who's about over 9.5 tenths back, also on the hard compound tyre. Leclerc, the quickest of the medium tyre runners at the moment in the Ferrari, 1.2 seconds behind Max Verstappen.
We saw this last year from Max, actually, on a couple of occasions, especially towards the end of last year. He was able in FP1 to go out there and put in a lap time that was about a second and a half quicker than everybody on the opening lap, and it took everybody half an hour to get up to his lap time again. The pace that he can show straight out the box is absolutely sensational, I've got to say. To be 1 second up the road from everybody straight out the blocks, it takes a lot of time to find a second.
It certainly does, and everybody is trying to find time. We mentioned McLaren and those upgrades, front wing, nose, rear corner, rear suspension as well, and there was a big upgrade on Lando Norris's car. We were told, and this has come from our BBC's chief F1 writer Andrew Benson, we weren't told that Oscar Piastri would get the same as what Lando Norris got in Austria here in Silverstone, and he will do, but we think that Lando Norris is going to get a little bit more on top as well. So while both will increase, Lando will get another little bit of extra sweetener on top, and we'll see how that one pans out. But it will be really interesting to see where Piastri ends up in particularly qualifying and the race, because you compare their 2 races from last time, and Oscar Piastri, it was 16th in the end, while Lando Norris was up in 4th place. So the disparity, that upgrade must have been a huge boost for a team. How much does that kind of thing motivate you as a driver when suddenly performance gains are so visible like that?
Oh, it's enormous for a racing driver to have that confidence that you know that upgrades are coming. I mean, the upgrades and the pursuit of lap time in Formula One is absolutely relentless. If you're not bringing upgrades, you're going backwards effectively, because guess what? Everybody else is bringing upgrades. Everybody else is honing their skills, learning, improving, making their car quicker. And Oscar, bless him, he's been in a position where he hasn't had the upgrades. His number 1 teammate Lando Norris has, and it'll be good for him to get, a part of this upgrade and see what he can bring to the table.
Absolutely. Exciting weekend for them. This is free practice 1 here at the British Grand Prix. 51 minutes and 8 seconds remain, and the first of 3 practice sessions, 2 today. We'll have another one on Saturday morning. So if you joined us for the Austria Sprint, it's back to the usual layout, not just the 1 practice. So plenty of time to test out these upgrades, which is why nearly almost every team has brought something to the table this weekend. And here is Max Verstappen.
It's getting worse and worse.
Okay.
complaining about grip there. Now, it's early on. The track's going to be fairly green. We had a bit of running from the support classes, Formula 2, Formula 3, but grip, surely is that only related to just rubber on track, or could be a car problem as well?
Well, no, that's basically he's on the hard compound tyre and the track is very green. The track will rubber in. When he goes to a softer compound tyre, he'll have more grip. But certainly the track at this stage will be green. Effectively, it hasn't cleaned up and the rubber hasn't gone down.
Well, as one of the McLarens comes into the pits, and it's Lando Norris, and they have a wonderful new livery. It's all part of their sponsorship tie-up, but they've gone back to the good old days where they had a chrome livery, but it's been interwoven with a bit of papaya orange as well. So it's nice to see that being brought back to McLaren as part of a sponsor club, but it's nice to see it here at the British Grand Prix. They're rocking some nice helmets as well. Very futuristic chrome, all silver helmet for Lando Norris. Rosanna, down in the pits.
I am, and I'm just watching George Russell come into the Mercedes garage. It's a front wing change for him. All the mechanics are out. I thought they were going to do a full pit stop practice, but actually it's just a front wing change for him. The sound of George Russell heading back out with that new front wing and back out onto the track. And actually, Lewis Hamilton's now in as well, also going for a front wing change. Quite a bit of work going on the car as well. I think they're altering, taking the front wing off, popping that back on as well. So both Mercedes coming in and out. But it's quite interesting in the pit lane, and I'm sure if you're listening, you will know what I'm talking about. Hollywood are in town this weekend. We've got Brad Pitt here. They're filming all the big new Apple movie that's going to be coming out. We've got two drivers, Sonny Hayes and Joshua Pierce, and we've got a full mock-up of a Formula 1 garage, and it's nestled between the Mercedes garage and the Ferrari garage down here in the pit lane. Apex GP, that's the name of the team. And I have to say, if you walk past and you were maybe new to Formula 1 and you're wandering around the pit lane and you had a look in, you would think there's an 11th team on the grid. This garage is full spec. They're even going to line up on the grid on Sunday, I'm told. So it's a pretty interesting spectacle down here in the pit lane. I almost got excited that we were having an 11th team announced, but of course I'm sure that's something that we may see in the future, but this weekend it's all fiction. But I can't wait to see how Silverstone translates onto the big screen with none other than Brad Pitt behind the steering wheel.
It's absolutely brilliant. I'm all for this filming with the Apex Grand Prix team headed up by Brad Pitt. And Rosanna's right, it's a set essentially, but some of the equipment they have in there resembles a top team, and the colour scheme is fantastic. It harks back to the Rich Energy Haas days with a bit of gold livery streaks along that car. Back onto the track action though, and Nick De Vries in the AlphaTauri. He just had a little spin out. I think I was coming through Brooklands and into Luffield, the right-hander, and finding the gravel and facing the wrong way, and I think nearly was met head-on with an Alfa Romeo, but he managed to keep it on track, the Alfa Romeo, and Nick De Vries, I believe, has managed to get himself out of the gravel and back on his way. So a little spin for De Vries there. It's Verstappen still fastest, though. We're 1:29.8 now ahead of Stroll, Sainz, Tsunoda, Hamilton, the top 5, Magnussen, Russell, Gasly, Norris, Leclerc, the top 10, De Vries, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Bottas and Perez, the top 15, still awaiting competitive lap times from Albon, Alonso, Piastri, Sargent and Zhou Guanyu.
Yeah, looked very lazy spin there for Nick De Vries. He turned into what was the old final corner, which is, I should know the name. It is, hang on, it's Luffield. Yeah, I should know that. Should absolutely know that. I know, that's shocking.
It's all right, it's FP1. We'll blow the cobwebs away.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't raced it. Remember, I race electric cars on street circuits, so I haven't been here for a while. But as he turned into Luffield, De Vries just had a really lazy, laborious spin. It does look super low grip, so that's why Max Verstappen was complaining earlier. The grip level right now is low. Yes, it's dry, everybody. Yes, they're using slicks. Yes, they've got all the downforce in the world. But still, the tyre needs to work in a certain way. Nick De Vries was on the medium compound, interestingly, and he's still having issues with the rear of that car.
Yeah. Nick De Vries and AlphaTauri actually saying, you know, as well, we've given Nick De Vries a tough car to drive. They are coming out in a bit more support of De Vries, who is one of the drivers that is most under pressure for his seat. Talk to Daniel Ricciardo, talk to Mick Schumacher lurking in the wings, Logan Sargent as well, the other rookie in the Williams, also coming under a little bit of increased pressure, but had a bit more of a result last time around. His best result actually in Austria, 13th place for the American racer. This is the sound on board the 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton, who is just making his way through Maggotts and Beckett's, the really fast, quick left-hander, then it's right, then it's there. There's so much action that goes on the steering wheel. Hamilton's not really on the pace at the moment. I think he's just gearing up for another lap. But he's got the DRS open as he heads down the back straight, the hanger straight, and then Stowe, the right-hander of turn 16, comes at you. To your right is the pit lane entry. Hamilton decides to carry straight on, and it's quite late on the brakes, and then you're into Vale. And it always looks difficult to manage these last sets of corners, and Lewis Hamilton saying on the radio, no grip currently as well. I had a little go at this track in the simulator earlier, and even I was struggling. And that's saying something.
Even you were struggling.
Even I.
Because you're that spectacular.
It's well renowned around here.
Well, yeah, you know, there's some seats going next year. You might as well, you know, put your name forward.
Oh, well, I think so. Although they don't make them quite big enough.
It is. Yeah. maybe I should put my name in the ring. Lewis Hamilton saying there's no grip. That's a few drivers now, and it is pretty obvious, isn't it, that they are lacking grip. Going back to Nick De Vries, it is interesting. For me, Formula One and motorsport in general is the most unforgiving sport in the world. You are only as good as your last race. It makes it very difficult mentally as a driver as well, especially if you have a poor run of form. You feel so under pressure to perform the next time. And when you're talking about hundredths and tenths of a second, it's very, very difficult to find your best form. And Nick is a world-class driver. He's proven that before. He's a world champion in Formula E, obviously. But right now, it's just not working for him. And Red Bull are...
It's like on ice.
It's like on ice, Max Verstappen. Red Bull are notorious, really notorious, for hiring and firing drivers if they're not doing the job well enough. I think that if he doesn't have a good next few races, I think his days are numbered.
Do you think we'll see out the season? If he has a couple of runs of it, do you think they'll do a mid-season replacement?
I'm really not sure. It wouldn't surprise me if they did. I hope that he gets the full year, because I think everybody deserves a full crack at it.
And you've raced against him.
Yeah, I've raced against him. I hope he gets a full crack at it, but it wouldn't surprise me if Red Bull decides that they want to make a change.
Do you think Red Bull are too brutal? Because we had this conversation almost, you know, every year. Every time there's a new Red Bull rookie or somebody in Red Bull who's struggling over the last 10 or so years, it's nothing new, them replacing drivers. But on the other hand, they give them the opportunity in the first place.
That's the thing. You know, they have destroyed a few drivers' careers, has really ruined a few drivers, but it's also made a lot of world champions and world-class racing drivers. You know, they gave Sebastian Vettel his big break. They gave Daniel Ricciardo his break. They've given Max Verstappen his big breaks. There are quite a few serious success stories out there, but there's also a lot of stories that are less successful.
The tractor is very poor out of all the slow speed. Disaster.
Once again, that was Esteban Ocon on the radio again, telling us what we already know now, and that this track is really bad for grip right now. That fastest lap time at the moment from Red Bull's Max Verstappen at 1:29.8. He's in the pit lane. Sergio Perez, his teammate, is trying for a quick lap time. He's currently down in 15th and looking to get his first proper lap time on the board as he makes the approach to the right-hander of Copse with 41 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We can head back down to Rosanna in the pits.
Thank you. Yes, I'm outside the Ferrari garage and Carlos Sainz has just been pushed back into the garage, and at the back of his car it is covered in that green highlighter colour, the Flovis paint, all over the rear of the car. So it looks like they're doing some tests there. So we're seeing quite a lot of teams, obviously people bringing a few upgrades, a few bits and bobs to their cars this weekend. A lot of analysis going on in this FP1 session, which I'm sure they were wishing they had last weekend as well, with some teams, especially Ferrari, bringing upgrades at the front of the car. Now they've at least got some time to really test them out and get that data that they need, that they can then
Well, it's loud down in the pit lane. You can tell that as we can almost feel a few vibrations on the floor of our commentary box as well. Hard at work in this free practice 1 session. But as upgrades are coming thick and fast and they're being tested out here completely, we haven't really spoken much about Aston Martin apart from slightly underwhelming Austria. They too have brought some upgrades. And Lance Stroll as well has looked like he's finding a bit more pace all of a sudden. You're out qualifying Fernando Alonso and now Aston Martin bringing a front wing and a rear corner as part of their upgrades this weekend, which are circuit specific, so hoping to find some performance there. Couldn't really, they brought a big upgrade in Montreal, but they couldn't quite gather the data enough from there because we had the CCTV issue for practice, we had rain, then of course we had a sprint weekend. Again, you only have 1 practice session, so now at a track like this, of course, Aston Martin and their new facilities, well, they're only a couple of miles away from this track. They're the closest
couple of miles.
Couple of miles?
Couple of metres.
Couple of metres. Well, it depends if you've got a nice scooter or if you get in a London taxi cab like me, you'll be stuck in traffic. But how do you think how have you seen Aston Martin's season so far? Because it has been brilliant, the immediate step up right from the start. And you were last with us at the early part of the season. Fernando Alonso back on the podium, everyone loves to see that. But they then did have a little bit, it seemed like a dip of form where they perhaps plateaued.
Well, I think that they've probably had 2, maybe 3 underwhelming races. The rest of them have been spectacular. If there's been a success story this season so far, it's Aston Martin and the energy that Fernando Alonso has brought back to Formula One with his sort of swashbuckling style of getting podiums and being up there as this veteran of Formula One and somebody that everybody looks to as very, very exciting to watch. So for me, I think Aston Martin are doing great. I hope that they can continue this form and hopefully the upgrade packages bring a little bit more lap time, because I do feel like Ferrari have popped ahead of them again and they need that upgrade to work this weekend.
Do you think with Ferrari it will continue to follow through here? Because I've spoken to a few people in the paddock and Austria, it's a tricky track, Austria. You've got the altitude to deal with as well. Could it have been a bit track specific? Too difficult to tell.
Yes and no. I mean, you need good line straight speed in Austria, but you also need good medium and high speed corner efficiency and decent braking. So I think if you can be quick there, then there's no reason why you can't be quick here at Silverstone. But Ferrari over the last sort of 3, 4, 5 years, there's been too many errors, too many mistakes, and that's not been fully ironed out yet. It's a little bit better this year, but there's still mistakes in there. Like if they want to, in the near future, mount a serious championship charge with either one of their drivers or as a constructor, they're going to A, have to improve their car, because Red Bull right now are so far up the road, and B, make less mistakes, both driver-wise and also on the strategy, because there's still mistakes in there, and you worry every race what's going to happen this weekend at Ferrari.
That is true, and every time you hear a strategy call on the radio, everyone's suddenly thinking, well, hang on a minute, where's this going to go?
I think Ferrari's the only team, really, where I hear the drivers almost calling the strategy. Is it plan A, plan B, plan C? There's like plan
E.
Plan J. I mean, it's remarkable, really. And, you've got Leclerc, who clearly has enough capacity in his head to think about what strategy they should be on. But surely the pit lane and the engineers on the prep perch have more information than the driver, and therefore you should go off the engineer's recommendation. It's much more difficult as a driver to see the whole outcome of the race.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens as the weekend unfolds. 36 minutes and 54 seconds remaining. Now, we've spoken a lot about McLaren and upgrades, and I believe Rosanna is outside the Papaya team.
I am, yes. I've wandered down to the McLaren garage, just next to the Ferrari garage in the pit lane. And there was such excitement, I think, from McLaren last weekend, although their team principal, Andrea Stella, still being quite realistic about their potential with the upgrade they brought to Austria, which just went on Lando Norris's car last weekend. This weekend, as promised, Oscar Piastri does have that same upgrade package on his car, but Lando has also now got, as he leaves the garage, he's also now got a new front wing. He's not running it continuously through this session, as you might expect. He's doing a bit of comparison work. But McLaren saying that it was ready, they've tried to expedite the process, so they've put the front wing on his car. So I think McLaren obviously showing signs of development, going nice and fast, trying to play that development game really well and trying to catch up with the likes of Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin. You could well put them in the mix, almost to the front end of that now, given Lando's performance last weekend in Austria, finishing P4 after all those penalties were applied for track limits. So exciting times for the McLaren outfit, I think, at the moment, especially in front of Lando's home crowd here in Silverstone.
Yeah, really exciting. You say home ground, you just look out in the grandstands and you can see a papaya orange and Lando Norris fluorescent hats and caps and bucket hats. They're all out for him there as the on-track action continues. I think we just had a Williams run out slightly wide into the gravel as the Alfa Romeo Valtteri Bottas runs over the curbs and kicks up the dust, and the sparks fly from the underneath of that Alfa Romeo as he comes through Copse Corner and makes his way towards Maggotts and Beckett's. Sam, one of the big things coming this weekend was the announcement of the 2024 calendar, and we've got a big season, 24 races planned, kicking off in Bahrain. Biggest ever, China returning for the first time since 2019. We've got Saturday races actually for Bahrain and Saudi Arabia along with Las Vegas as well. And we've had the first regionalised calendar, or the beginnings of some groupings to make the sport a bit more sustainable. That's the idea. Races have moved positions. So the big jumps to Japan has moved from September to April. Baku's moved from April to September. And Qatar has shifted from October to December to try and save on carbon emissions with all the travelling. How do you view the calendar? Because it's still long. You still get some gruelling triple headers.
You do, but that's the big one for me is moving Suzuka into a better window seasonally for Suzuka. You know, whenever we go there, it seems to be there's a likelihood of bad weather, very cold, very misty, wet. You know, if it moves to April, then we're far more likely to see nice sunny weather, good dry race, and I think that's a much better time to go to Japan. So I'm very pleased about that. I also think it makes sense for Formula One to kind of go in blocks, have, you know, your American block, your European block, your Asian block, and move across the globe in that way. I think environmentally it's more sustainable, and I think it's better for everybody. Also the time zones, I mean, it is brutal when you're moving, you know, 8-10 hour time zones week to week. It's absolutely brutal.
But that's the thing, it is better for freight, and by no means, I actually just had a chat before I came in here with the head of sustainability at F1, and she was saying, you know, we're not there yet, it's not complete. But from a freight perspective, this grouping is great. But as you allude to there, for the individual, for the travelling media, for the engineers, we've got a couple of gruelling triple headers, Austin, Mexico, Sao Paulo, where you can't come home in between them. You can't be at the factory. You can't see your loved ones. That's going to take a massive toll on the human element.
But it's always been like that in Formula One. That's the difficulty of working within this touring circus. It is very, very difficult to juggle work life and personal life. I mean, it does put big strains on a lot of people's relationships as well. You know, this is a full-time
It's
job.
a way of life.
It is a way of life, and there's people in this paddock who will probably see more of their work colleagues than they do of their partners or their children, and it is very challenging. There is a massive demand for Formula One currently after a certain program on Netflix, and the fact that the rivalry between Lewis and Max a few years ago, that brilliant battle they had down to the wire in Abu Dhabi, Formula One has exploded in such an amazing way. I mean, we're sat here in the comms box doing this in Silverstone, overlooking the pit lane, and I've never seen Silverstone so busy on a Friday. It's wonderful. But I've got to say, it does take it out of every individual in this paddock that goes to every race.
Absolutely. Well, those were the big movers in terms of grouping, and our producer Paddy has just reminded me that Japan moving to April, it brings it into the height of the cherry blossom season. So wonderful time of year in Japan. And everyone loves Japan. It's always a driver's and a fan's favourite, isn't it? As is Silverstone here at the British Grand Prix. It is free practice 1. It is 31 minutes and 20:19. 18 seconds remaining of this FP1 session. This is the sound of Carlos Sainz making his way down the Wellington Straight, up through the gears in his Ferrari as he gets into the braking zone of Brooklands. It's Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez who are fastest at the moment. A 1:29.8 from Verstappen, and then Sargent in the Williams is third. Leclerc, Stroll the top 5, Sainz, Zhou, Tsunoda, Albon, Hamilton the top 10, Bottas, Gasly, Ocon, Norris, Magnussen the top 15, Russell, De Vries, Piastri, Alonso and Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas is 20th and last at the moment. But a lot of drivers complaining about the grip on this Silverstone circuit. We had a bit of track running with some F2 and F3 practice sessions earlier on in the day, but still, and Brad Pitt actually went round as well in his Apex Grand Prix car, but still clearly a very green track as they're trying to get up to grips with not just the surface but also understanding the raft of upgrades that teams have brought up and down the grid. But Carlos Sainz is on a pretty good lap at the moment for the Ferrari man.
He is indeed, but he's the first of what I would say is the front runners to move to the soft compound tyres, so that's why we're seeing him moving up the leaderboard. I presume that this will put him at the top of the leaderboard. Yes, it does, by half a second, but soft tyres against hard, it's hardly fair, really. I think when we see Verstappen go out there, we're going to see one heck of a lap time.
Yeah, and that's why Logan Sargent as well was so high up in his Williams. I know they have brought some new upgrades for him from Austria onwards. The big upgrade that Alex Albon got in Montreal, but Sargent up there just under a second off at the moment on his soft compound tyre in the top 4. Yuki Tsunoda is making his way also on the Red Bull soft compound of tyre. And we should actually say it's the debut of a new slick tyre construction. We didn't mention this a little earlier, but the post-Silverstone test as well that we're going to have is going to be used for some more tyre testing, but new tyres being brought, or a new construction of slick tyre for this weekend that was trialled out after Barcelona as Yuki Tsunoda goes fourth on the new set of tyres to make their durability a little bit better. Of course, here we've seen many a tyre blowout at the scene of Silverstone. Hamilton winning on 3 wheels, and we had it back in, I think, back to 2013 as well. Then we had a lot of
2013. I remember that well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Tell you what, that was the first Grand Prix I ever watched trackside. My first one.
Oh, you're still young though, aren't you?
I am.
You're still a puppy.
That. Yeah. So that was brilliant, and I'll tell you what, I was gutted for Paul di Resta.
Can you remember who won that GP2 race that weekend?
Was it? What was his name? He's not doing much now. How was that? Was that the last time you won at Silverstone?
Me and you are not going to be getting on.
Well, we've got 28 minutes left of this first Grand Prix practice 1 session. Who could forget that it was, of course, Sam Bird? What was it? Was that Russian time era?
It was Russian time, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so it looks like Lewis Hamilton is on a little bit of a fly. Currently on the medium compound tyre, he's just done his fastest sector 1. We've got a load of mini sectors in our comms book, which is really, really useful. Basically, then it splits the track into each individual corner and lets us know how they're getting on there. We've got quite a few green popping up for Lewis right now as he comes to the end of sector 2. Again, green in sector 2, so we should see an improvement from Lewis. Let's see what he gets up to in the final sector. Into Stowe, throws it in, gets the apex, a little bit of oversteer, uses all the track on the exit right onto the curbs. Late braking, 70 metres roughly. Oh, big snap of oversteer in the middle of the final chicane. Then difficult to get on the traction. Everybody's struggling at the moment with the rear of the car and getting power down as Lewis moves up to 6th, even with that big slide. So, you know, good improvement, but lots of room for improvement at the same time.
Yeah, as he comes back through turns 1 and 2 off the power and has a cool down lap. We were running with Carlos Sainz, we should say, of course, seen last year, first pole position, first win. Now, unbelievably, Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari is the highest driver in the standings. We're yet to achieve a podium this year.
That's remarkable.
Yeah,
not got a podium yet.
No, best result is 4th, which was at round 1 in Bahrain. And he's got 10 more points, I believe. 82 points for Sainz, 72 points for his teammate Leclerc, who's just behind him. And Leclerc, of course, has had pole position and 2 podiums, Baku and Austria. So remarkable consistency as we hear the sounds of his teammate Charles Leclerc. But from Carlos Sainz, that's quite impressive. But at the same time, it's almost a sort of monkey's got to get off his back at some stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Formula 1 is extremely difficult to be in the top 3, 4 all the time. it's very demanding. Lewis Hamilton radio?
Bounce is pretty bad, mate.
Bouncing
Okay,
pretty bad. As we saw last year, at the beginning of last year, that Mercedes struggled massively with what we called porpoising at the time. It seems to have disappeared quite a bit now. I've just seen something quite interesting on the timing sheet. Fernando Alonso is down in 19th. However, he just did on the hard compound tyre a phenomenal sector 1 and started to go purple in sector 2, but then aborted the lap. It looks like he's on a cool down now, and next lap we're going to see hopefully a representative time from Aston Martin's #1 driver.
Keep an eye on that one as well, and he's had I think this will be his 20th start or here in yes, he'll be racing it for the 20th time, Fernando Alonso, in his F1 career, tying with Kimi Raikkonen for the most career appearances at a circuit. Nice like that for a stat. So once again, the most experienced man on the grid and the oldest driver getting into the history books once more. So it's certainly a track he is au fair with. And he's a 2-time winner here, of course, as well. But right now, though, it's Fernando Alonso's old team, a Ferrari, which are currently 1 and 2 with 25 just over minutes left of FP1. It's Sainz who leads with a 1:29.3 ahead of Leclerc, Verstappen, Perez, Tsunoda the top 5, Sargent, Hamilton, Albon, Stroll, Hülkenberg the top 10, Zhou, Piastri, Bottas, Gasly, Ocon the top 15, Norris, Magnussen, Russell, De Vries, and Fernando Alonso, who has just started his lap now, so we'll see what he's got on those hard compounder tyres in that Aston Martin. This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton, who we just heard a moment ago, making his way through Copse. And lots of lockups going on as drivers push to the limits to get the most out of this FP1 session. We'll have another one later on this afternoon. But Rosanna, back to you in the pits.
Yeah, it was a little bit busy just now. I'm standing outside the Mercedes garage and Lewis Hamilton had come in. He pulled off his bright fluorescent gloves, so you knew he was coming into the garage. And then the mechanics started to roll him really far forward in front of where I am, down towards the Apex GP garage, the Hollywood garage. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Why are they pushing him so far down? And then it was George Russell who came in as well, but he was just doing a stop and go. So he's headed back out on track. Lewis then was pushed back. There's a bit of choreography going on down here. And actually, it's quite a nice wide pit lane. So plenty of space, but still lots for the mechanics to think about when they're moving the cars around. So Lewis in, George still out on track.
Thanks, Rosanna. We have been keeping an eye on Fernando Alonso's fast lap time coming in on the hard compounder tyre. He's coming into the final sector and the last couple of corners of this lap so far, and has lit up the mini sector screens, and he crosses the line and he goes up to 9th fastest, Alonso.
I thought that was going to be quicker than the 9th quickest.
It didn't start the way great.
No.
But then, then it was green personal best, and then he had a couple of purple mini sectors, so I thought he might have been finding it in that middle part.
Yeah, but remember, he's on the hard compound tyre, and a lot of people now have moved towards the medium and or the soft. It's only really Verstappen and Perez who have been able to do faster laps than Fernando Alonso on the hard compound tyre. So, okay, he's 9th right now, but I'd say that he's closer to the front of the grid than what that suggests.
Back to back to our Ferrari chat just that we were having there. Andrew Benson, the BBC chief F1 writer, just telling us that, remember, Leclerc retired from 3rd place in Bahrain, so actually he would have had another podium to his name as well, which would have got him above Sainz in the standings, but he did retire. The other thing, Andrew's saying Leclerc is on average just over a 10th and a half faster on average in qualifying. That brings a bigger point. How do you rate the two Ferrari drivers? Because the natural instinct of Charles Leclerc is the Ferrari golden boy. He's the Ferrari man through and through. Carlos Sainz, was a Red Bull man, jumped around from team to team. Renault, McLaren, then got the Ferrari opportunity. And is often the one that actually overrules the strategy calls that are coming in during races. But do you think Sainz has what it takes with that championship material equal to Leclerc, or is Leclerc something special? Asking all the big questions for FP1.
I mean, as two individuals, I think they're both great guys. Two people that I admire and I get on with well. Can they go and beat Verstappen toe-to-toe? Now that's the question that we've got to ask ourselves. Which one of them can take it to Max if and when Ferrari build a car that is capable of doing so? I would lean towards saying that Charles maybe has a little bit, just a smidge more natural speed, but then Carlos can make that up with, you know, intelligence and smart racing. I'm not saying that Charles isn't a smart racer. I'm not saying that at all. His natural ability and his racecraft is brilliant, but Carlos is able to manufacture results sometimes when others aren't. So it's nip and tuck. It's difficult to call between those two. I'm going to sit on the fence. I'm saving face.
You're not giving me an answer.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to. They're both really good guys. I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, you won't get in trouble. You're Sam Bird.
Oh dear, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, it is Sainz still at the top. It's actually a decent lap time from Sainz on the soft. 1:29.3 in front of Leclerc.
We've just seen Gasly go up to third in the Alpine on a set of softs with a 29.8. So that's a big improvement for him.
And just seeing what upgrades Alpine have brought. That was the sound of Pierre Gasly you heard coming across the line. This is the sound of Charles Leclerc, who is on an outlap right now. But Alpine bringing a front wing for some performance gains this weekend. And Gasly was one of the, well, along with his teammate, but was one of the victims of track limits, as was everybody. But Esteban Ocon, his teammate, I think beating his own record of the most amount of penalties given out in a race, and all coming from track limits.
Yeah, there was plenty of memes on social media after the last race of Esteban Ocon. We love a front wing upgrade, don't we? I've got a funny story from Monaco back in 2012, I think it was.
Okay.
With Michael Schumacher, we brought a brand new front wing to Monaco for the Grand Prix there, and only Michael had this front wing, and they had two of them. And in FP1, he went and damaged the front wing, broke it. So down to one. And it was a case of, right, Michael, you've got this last wing. This has got to last the weekend now. FP2 happens. That one breaks. He's broken another one. So we're having the meeting after FP2, and it's like, oh, we've broken both front wings, don't know what to do. And Michael was like, don't worry, I've got the jet on standby. Just put the parts on the jet. I'll get the guys just to send it back to Brackley, get it fixed, and then you can use my private jet to bring it back. So, yeah, as you do.
He made up for it. He made up for it.
And lo and behold, the next day he went and got his final ever pole position on what was a brilliant lap. So, and that was that front wing that he damaged.
Big vibration steering through Maggie's packets. There you go.
And that's a lot of it.
Rich and his gang have a good look at this steering piece.
Well, Rich and his gang have got a lot of work to do then, by the sounds of it. Having a look at the steering, vibrations coming through Maggotts and Beckett's.
That's not the place where you want to be having a load of vibrations. No. That's a very, very high-speed part of the circuit where the car's loaded massively on the right-hand tyres, then to the left hand, then to the right hand, back to the left hand again. It takes a lot out of the car, a lot out of yourself, actually, as well, to get through that sequence of corners.
Well, this is the sound of George Russell. He's just come through Maggotts and Beckett's. He's now on the back straight through the right-hander of Stowe, coming into Vale. Hear him on the downshifts. Brings it into Vale, then 17, then Club, then we have the final corner, and he's lost a bit of time, about 3/10 in the middle sector, nearly 6/10 overall off though, so Russell on the medium compounder tyre at 7th fastest at the moment. Leclerc now has the fastest time, less than half a tenth though between himself and Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Then it's Sainz, De Vries, Gasly the top 5, Verstappen, Russell, Perez, Bottas, Tsunoda the top 10, Sargent, Hamilton, Piastri, Magnussen, Albon, Hulkenberg the top 16, Alonso, Stroll, Zhou and Lando Norris 20th and last at the moment, with 17 minutes and 12 seconds remaining. This is free practice 1 with myself, Harry Benjamin. I'm joined by the former Mercedes reserve driver and current Jaguar Formula E driver Sam Bird. Rosanna Tennant is down in the pit lane, regaling us, you have been, Sam, of front wing tails from Michael Schumacher. That was his last official pole position, wasn't it? But he was given a penalty.
He was given a five.
He banged the centre in the weekend before.
Just watching the outboard of George Russell then, obviously he's reported vibrations through Maggotts and Beckett's, but it also both Mercedes cars look very tail happy. The front end looks quite positive on the medium compound, but it just looks like the rear doesn't want to follow the front, and then traction looks really, really poor. I know everybody's been struggling for grip, but for me, that's an area where Mercedes will want to tidy up their car going into FP2.
This is the sound further back of Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, currently 14th fastest, and Magnussen is on the soft compound of tyre, a little bit down on time though at the moment as he comes into Magnussen Beckett's. I really like Haas's driver lineup at the moment. I think although they're not quite delivering results time and time every race, they're very much limited by their car. Magnussen going for a personal best in the middle sector, and K-Mag himself saying, I've got to get better at qualifying because he's being outdone by Nico Hülkenberg in this sense. But having these two drivers who have come away from Formula One, they've had their dads, they've come back multiple times actually. They know what a good car should feel like and what it takes. So I think that's quite a decent lineup to have to spearhead and drive a team like Haas forward.
Oh, they're both quality drivers. They're both really quality drivers, and they've both shown that throughout their careers. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg has never really had a shot at a top drive. And I'd rate him just as good as Sergio Perez, to be honest.
Yeah.
He'd do the same sort of job. It's a shame. I can't believe that Nico Hülkenberg has never had a Formula One podium. He holds that record now by a country mile, longest ever stint in Formula One without a podium. I'm gobsmacked that he's never had one. And obviously K-Mag, his podium came in his first ever race, and everybody thought, this kid
is the new
burst,
Hamilton.
yeah, and it never really happened after that at McLaren. But he's found his home at Haas. He's happy. He drives the car incredibly well, and that he's a safe pair of hands, and he's a feisty fighter. I mean, he really gets his elbows out.
They don't call him the Viking for no reason. Well, they're both former Enstone drivers, former Renault drivers, and now known as Alpine, and we'll be keeping an eye on them because he's looking quite pacey, bringing upgrades. Ocon currently second, Gasly down in fifth, and I think Rosanna's outside Alpine.
Certainly am, and it's Gasly that's just come in, and you can hear the squeal of the wheel guns. They just did a little pretend pit stop. He hasn't gone out, he's still there, he's being wheeled in. And actually I just had a funny conversation, if you could call it that, with one of the Alpine mechanics. I was going, is he coming in or is he going in out? And so we were trying to establish what the other was saying. It is, as you said earlier on, Harry, very loud down here in the pit lane. Communication at a premium, as is grip, as it turns out, on this amazing track.
Well, people are absolutely loving it in the grandstands right now. Again, they are packed to the rafters, just having a little glimpse out of our commentary box seats. A lot of Union Jack flags, and actually there's a Swedish flag out there. So we've got a few Marcus Ericsson fans in the building, I think, but he's in the wrong. You're in the wrong series now. But the grandstands are packed with a sea of orange. We've got fluorescent Lando Norris hats, Mercedes merch in full flow. We've got a few Williams Albon fans too, as they watch Lewis Hamilton drive by on the Hamilton straight. 13 minutes 14 seconds left of this free practice one session, and it is Leclerc though in the Ferrari that currently leads by less than half a tenth.
There's going to be quite a fast lap time, everybody, in about 2 minutes time crossing the finish line. Max Verstappen is on an out lap on soft tyres, just coming into sector 3. So we've just joined him actually outboard on the television. Let's see what Max Verstappen can do. He's seeking a 6th consecutive race win, something only achieved by Ascari, Schumacher, Vettel and Nico Rosberg.
I didn't know you had that in your locker.
No, he just said it on the TV.
Yeah, well done.
I could try and claim that, like I'm that good. Right, we're on board with Max Verstappen going across the start-finish line, going into turn 1. Is it flat out? You bet it is in that Red Bull. Looks absolutely at home in this car this year, braking at about 70 metres, missing the apex a little bit, rear of the car, squirming as he tries to get it under control through the right and then the left. Good traction, getting down towards Brooklands and Luffield. What is Sector 1 going to be like? He's got purple and green in all the mini sectors, and he's 28.1, not purple in Sector 1. Through Luffield, a little bit wide, working his hand, good on the traction, exiting Luffield, now down towards Copse, again flat out in these modern Formula 1 cars. Turning right, over the curb on the exit. Actually, he's got a little bit more room to work with there on the exit. Now Maggotts and Beckett's, what a section of corners this is. Right, left, amazing. Oh, but a little bit wide out of Maggotts and Beckett's. He's 3.5 tenths up, but that would have cost him quite a lot of time down this straight. Still got the DRS open, he's still going to complete this lap, but you know that there's lap time in this for Max Verstappen.
Last couple of corners for him. And through the last couple of right-handers and across the line for Max Verstappen. And it's still enough for fastest. But if that isn't ominous, I don't know what is. A 1:28.8, despite the fact he clearly had a bit more room to push coming through before coming through Cobbs. And then went off into the cross through Maggotts.
Sector 1 was messy. He went off the track in at the end of Sector 2. It wasn't as bad as
it looked
we
worse
thought.
off board.
No, but he still wouldn't have had the best trajectory coming out of that corner. He's run wide, he's on the dust. The floor's banging around on that curb, so you're going to lose a little bit of straight line speed performance. There's a bigger lap than what he's just shown in that car and within him. I think that he will end up quickest probably at the end of the session, but we know that he's got a few tenths left in him, that's for sure.
It's another ominous start to a weekend for Max Verstappen. It was just not putting a toe out of line. Well, he did a little bit there, running over the curbing on the exit of Chapel. But the big thing for me, I know it's all hypotheticals, but if Max was a constructor on his own, he'd still be leading the championship with the amount of points
Max
he has.
Verstappen Racing.
Well, I think,
powered by Red Bull.
Powered by Red Bull. Might well have it. And, on the development side of things as well, Lewis Hamilton came out with some comments over the last couple of weeks saying he thinks that there should be an allotted time that the FIA say, OK, you can't start upgrading for next year until this time, or this is when upgrades can begin, or this is when you can begin working on your next year's car. Is that something you think would be quite a good introduction? Of course, Red Bull have gone, absolutely not, no, we're not having that. But someone like Lewis Hamilton to say that, I thought was fairly noteworthy.
But Formula One's never been like that. You're always looking to and then what happens? So everybody then spends the whole year looking to do these upgrades. You then do enormous simulator work, CFD work, CAD work, and then halfway through the year or 3/4 of the way through the year, you've then got completely different cars that can go a second and a half quicker than they did at the beginning. Then you've got Formula One Part 1 and Formula One Part 2 at the end of the year. I like the fact that different people bring different upgrades at different times. Then you've got this kind of seesawing of lap times in the mid-pack. It makes it exciting. Otherwise, you've just got, well, that's the order at this stage, and that's the order at this stage, and then nothing really moves around. The whole part, the fun of Formula One is the upgrade race for me. I find it fascinating.
Well, it's the pinnacle of motorsport, and that requires huge amounts of work and effort. Every part counts, and the development race is the off-track race that we so enjoy.
I've got to say that the rear of that Mercedes at the moment looks vicious.
Yeah, this is the sound of Lewis Hamilton coming around the final corner now.
Really, really difficult. He's really struggling with the rear of that car. It looks like it lacks downforce, lacks traction. The front end turns in and the rear doesn't want to know right now.
We just had some quite good fast lap times come in as well from Albon in the Williams and Alonso in the Aston Martin. Just put themselves up to second and third behind Verstappen. On the soft compound tyre, Albon about 2.5 tenths back from Verstappen, and Alonso another couple of tenths back from him. Leclerc, Ocon the top 5, Perez, Sainz, Norris, Piastri, De Vries the top 10, Hamilton, Gasly, Russell, Bottas, Tsunoda the top 15, Sargent, Joe, Magnussen, Hülkenberg and Stroll, who is currently coming through Maggotts and Beckett's now. Doesn't run out too wide like Max Verstappen. The sparks don't fly, the dust doesn't come up on the exit of the corner, and down the hanger straight he goes, approaching the right-hander of turn 15. DRS, the rear wing flat at the rear of the car, which opens in the DRS zones, and it only opens in the races if you're within a second of the car in front, but in practice it's fair game only in those sectors. Slap shut, and before you know it, he's already coming through the final corner now, the right-hander. And what's it going to be for the Canadian racer on the soft compound tyre? It's a 1:29.4 up into 9th spot in a McLaren sandwich, with Norris ahead and Piastri behind.
Impressed by Alexander Albon. I mean, he's having a phenomenal year anyway, but I think, am I right in saying that this is Williams' 800th Formula One race? Wouldn't it be amazing for them to have an absolute blinder here this weekend at the home of British Motorsport, their home race? You know, a British-born sort of Thai driver, it would be incredible.
Well, yes, you're absolutely right. To get technical, if we hadn't have had Imola cancelled, this would have been their 800th Grand Prix.
Well, let's call it
not
the
quite
800th.
cancelled.
Let's just say it is.
But they're celebrating it across this weekend and Hungary because they've got a special livery, which has got a bit of a Union flag embedded into the rear and the side pod of the Williams in blue, in the Williams blue colour. So it's fantastic to be absolutely right. And there's always huge cheers. Alex Albon, one of the most likeable characters in the paddock, and doing a great job of it at the moment. He's coming off the back of 7th place in Canada. Felt like he should have scored points in Austria, but it didn't quite work out for him. And that's a great thing when you've got a Williams driver who is frustrated that they should have scored points. Much better position than where they've been over the last, well, coming up to a decade, really, for the two Williams cars. Logan Sargent in the other with his best result last time around with upgrades, 13th place for him in his Williams, the American rookie. 5.5 minutes just under that left then of free practice one. Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes just had a little skirmish over the curbs and the sparks flying from the underside of that Brackley car. Meanwhile, his teammate George Russell has just begun a lap, and he's pushing on the medium compound of tyre. He's currently down in 14th at the moment, so not pursuing outright lap time from the British racer.
So we're seeing Max Verstappen improving, as we see George Russell making a mistake at Brooklands, just going a little bit deep, having a bit of a snap and having to use the escape road. But Max Verstappen is, I think he's improving after sector 2.
Yes.
It's just about on par with his fastest lap. It'll be interesting to see. So this tyre has now been through one push lap and a cool down. He's gone again. He's done a couple of purple mini sectors. It's going to be nip and tuck as to whether he improves his lap time overall, but it's proving that the tyre at this stage of the weekend can survive multiple laps.
Well, he's coming into the last couple of corners now. This is the sound of George Russell's. We're just seeing how he made a mistake coming into the left-hander of Brooklands and just gets a little wiggle on the wheel, and that forces him deep.
Yeah, again, the rear of the Mercedes just giving up on lateral loading. Max Verstappen did improve. He's now nearly half a second clear of his teammate Sergio Perez in second place.
Would you want to be Sergio Perez?
Yes, of course.
If you were,
there's about 15 million reasons why I'd like to be Sergio Perez. Of course.
Even if you are always constantly under pressure, you're not as quick as Verstappen, you're never going to win the championship.
But he's not going to think like that.
Okay.
Sergio is a confident, world-class racing driver, and he's going to always believe, you know, all of these guys believe in their own ability, believe in themselves. He's going to think on his day, when he's driving at his best, he can take it to Max. He's not going to be thinking, this guy's too good for me. You don't think that as a racing driver. You always think you're in with a shout. He's got the best car. It is difficult at Red Bull because everybody else kind of knows, look, you're playing second fiddle. But he's not. He will be refusing to believe that.
Is there a driver you wouldn't want to be?
Is there a driver that I wouldn't want to be?
In the current
Sergio Perez.
Oh dear, thought you might have gone for a Nick de Vries there.
Honestly, right now I'd probably say the driver that I wouldn't want to be is Nick de Vries. I think that situation is very difficult, and when you're under that much pressure, that much scrutiny, and everybody's talking about it all the time, there's no hiding. It's really, really difficult, and you've got to rise above that and just try and show your worth. But sometimes that's really, really difficult, and it's not because he's not a brilliant driver, because Nick de Vries, let me tell you, he is. He's a brilliant young racing driver. I hope that he can get through this period and showcase what a talent he is, because it's a shame to see somebody not delivering what they can, and it's not because of lack of speed or lack of potential. I think it's just sometimes when the weight of the world's on your shoulders, you're not able to showcase what you truly can do.
Well, it doesn't help, obviously, that the car clearly isn't great. AlphaTauri currently last of the constructors. And as we just seeing a little replay of a bit of carbon fibre bodywork flying off of the Haas as he comes down the, is that the Wellington straight, I think, and pulls out from behind George Russell, and losing a little bit there from the Haas. So they'll bring Hulkenberg back into the pits, I'm sure, to have a little look at what went flying off the Haas car there.
One of the marshals will have a nice little souvenir.
Oh, yeah, great. They do such a good job here. It's nice that they can go home with a little something. Just on De Vries, though, do you think there was so much hype about him? That brilliant result with Williams coming into this last year when he deputised for Alex Albon, ironically, probably hasn't helped. And all this talk about Formula E World Champion, Formula 2 Champion, he's not really a rookie. None of that helps, because
no, it doesn't help.
He was a rookie, and he has not had a full go at it.
It doesn't help, and when you have a Red Bull emblem on your race helmet, you are expected to deliver from the offset, and if you don't, the chances are is that you're out of the door. You're only given a number of races to prove your worth. If you can't, they've got a fleet of drivers that can come in and do the job for you. You know, they've got Liam Lawson waiting in the wings. They've got Daniel Ricciardo chomping at the bit. They've got
Ayumu
Iwasa there as well. They've got 3 or 4 guys that want to jump in, hungry, and that's tough. That's tough. I don't care who you are. That's not a fun situation to be in when everybody's touting around these names instead of yourself. I just hope that he knuckles down, gets a good couple of results together, and then can put that to bed. Can worry about how he's going to improve his race car instead of, do I have a job to go to on Monday morning?
Well, at the moment, De Vries is currently 11th. I know it's only free practice 1, but he is about, where's Tsunoda? He's about just under half a second clear of his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda.
There we go. He's keeping the job.
Done.
There we go, it's done.
Turnaround of form. But actually, I think it highlights this season as well. It's hard to tell. Yuki has clearly made a bit of an improvement, but he's also in his 3rd year, and he's had the school of AlphaTauri and Franz Tost, who likes to give their drivers 3 years.
Yeah, I think Yuki's had a real breakout year so far. I'd say that after Fernando Alonso, I'd say that Yuki's probably had one of the best seasons so far this year in Formula 1. He's been exciting. He's kind of outperformed the car a little bit. So we're just seeing Fernando Alonso on the soft tyre. He's nowhere near the pace. He's 1 second off after 2 sectors. So it looks like we've got our final positions.
I think we have. Checker flag is out there at the end of this free practice 1 session. This is the sound in the background. Fernando Alonso just finishing his lap, but it's not going to be a fast one as they all begin to take the checkered flag. Russell is out there finding a little bit of time, but not enough. So we'll call it there, shall we? Max Verstappen then fastest at the end of free practice 1, a 1:28.6, dead on, just under half a second clear of his teammate Sergio Perez. Standout from Alex Albon and the Williams as they celebrate 800 Grand Prix across this weekend, and Hungary in 3rd in front of Alonso, Leclerc the top 5, Ocon, Sainz, Norris, Stroll, Piastri the top 10, De Vries, Hamilton, Gasly, Russell and Bottas the top 15, Tsunoda, Sargent, Zhou, Magnussen and Hulkenberg, the 2 Hasses, 19th and 20th.
Thank you very much, Harry, and thank you very much, Sam Bird, as well, for talking us through that first practice session.
Cars all over the place now in 6 and 7.
Bit of a moment for George Russell out on track. Both he and his teammate having a few moments out there, as we hear from Perez.
Back in the middle of the track.
Okay.
Yes, from the screen that I'm watching down here in the F1 paddock, it looked like a sort of pierced balloon or something. So a little bit of debris on track, or perhaps something that's fluttered on there from the fans around the track. Guys, an interesting session. Verstappen, Perez, a 1-2 for Red Bull. And then Alex Albon in P3. Should we get excited about that, Harry and Sam?
Yeah, go on, why not? I mean, Albon is not off the pace massively. Maybe he's not in podium contention, but Williams, this upgrade they brought in Montreal, in the hands of Alex Albon right now, it is looking pacey.
Do you know what? The last time I remember Williams having a big sort of anniversary celebration race was a certain race in Barcelona in 2012 with Pastor Maldonado. What happened that weekend? They went and won. Just saying. Just saying.
Just saying, just leaving that hanging in the air. The sound that you can hear in the background is the teams obviously talking their drivers through some practice starts. But I enjoyed that session. We had a lot of track activity. The teams making the most of these glorious conditions that we've got. Blue skies with just a few scattered clouds here at Silverstone. But guys, I'm going to pierce the bubble or break the news that I'm absolutely covered in thunderbugs, and I always think that is a sign of a weather change. It could be that someone has started their harvest in the surrounding fields, someone's combining, and therefore I'm covered in thunderbugs. Going all country file on you here, but do we anticipate a condition change coming up, even if it's not for FP2 today or across the weekend? And then what does that do to the pecking order?
I've just learned a new name for a new thing. I was wondering what those things were. They're all over me at one point when I was coming to the pit lane. Does it? What's your question again, Rosanna? Sorry.
Well, will we see a condition change? You've got a great vantage point. You can see over the glorious county of Northamptonshire and probably several other counties from where you are up in the commentary box. Any sign of clouds gathering or coming in to ruin the party?
I mean, there are a few nice white puffy clouds, but nothing really that is interrupting the vast blue sky and the sun that shines down here in Silverstone. There is a little bit of uncertainty on Grand Prix Sunday about the weather and how that's going to look, but it's still, there could be a bit of rain. There is rain lingering across the weekend, but I think today we're pretty confident of some dry running.
Well, there we go. That'll be music to the ears of the fans here in the grandstands who've been packing the place out since yesterday already. Max Verstappen then fastest in FP1 ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. My thanks to Sam Bird and Harry Benjamin up in the box for talking us through that one. From me here in the F1 paddock, Rosanna Tennant, it is goodbye. We'll fire up again 5 minutes before FP2, so join us at 5 to 4 later on the BBC Sport website. Goodbye.